Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today, A Soulful Journey Through Nepal and Bhutan. And we're broadcasting live today from New Delhi, India. We're here with Suhail Gupta. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Suhail, and then I'll turn it over to him. Suhail has made his passion sharing the wonders of nature, and especially tigers, his full-time career. He started out as a naturalist guide at Tiger Top's Eco Lodge in Nepal's Royal Chitwan National Park and went on to manage that most famous tented camp. He then became assistant to Toby Sinclair in Delhi, who was producing a landmark BBC series shot in India called Land of the Tiger, which is six one-hour films on the wildlife of the subcontinent. Suhail went on to work on many more films for the BBC, most recently a three-part series called Tigers, Spy in the Jungle. And that was telecast in the UK in 2009. Suhail has provided custom guiding for many different individuals and groups, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Textile Museum. And we're delighted today to have him guide us on a virtual journey through Nepal and Bhutan. Welcome, Suhail.
Thank you very much, Dee. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for taking time out and joining me on this journey through Nepal and Bhutan. I'm very glad, we've got this opportunity to take you through this current trip because, as you know, Nepal has had a very unfortunate incident earlier this year, where we had, a terrible earthquake on the April 25th, which hit the western part of the eastern part of Nepal. As you can see now on your slide, on your screen, you'll see a map of the subcontinent, and you will see Nepal there. Now, you have, if you look right of Kathmandu, you will see Mount Everest, and that's the area you had that was the epicenter close to Everest in a place called Gorkha. And that is where the unfortunate earthquake emanated and, of course, impacted a large area around it. But when one looks at Nepal as a country today, a country of 28 million people, this unfortunate earthquake, sort of damaged 11 districts out of 75 in the country, and unfortunately we lost 9,000 lives and over 23,000 people were injured. The Nepalese people are amazing people. They're very strong, very resilient, and I think it all boils down to them having to survive in this beautiful but harsh landscape of the Himalaya. Living at high altitudes. With small tracts of land, farming, walking great distances to get their supplies or go to school. So they're a very tough and resilient people, and they are amazingly joyful. And I think all these qualities have helped them bounce back. I was in Kathmandu recently to meet my colleagues in our office there, and it was amazing to see the energy in the city. The cafes and the shops and the streets were buzzing with people. All the facilities which a living city should have from an infrastructure perspective was all functioning and working. And the Nepalese people are dying for visitors to come back because one must remember. The Nepalese economy survives on tourism. In fact, tourism contributes $1.6 billion every year to Nepal's economy. So it's a very important sort of part of their survival. And if you were to ask me in May this year, after the earthquake, would I recommend travel to Nepal, say in September, October, or even November? I would have at that point of time said no, and the reasons I would have said no would be essentially, the communities have been torn apart by this horrible earthquake, and they needed time to rebuild, to grieve, to come to terms with their loss, and in homes, in family members, etc. But after they've gone through this phase of grieving and starting to rebuild their lives and looking forward, the next phase is looking at oneself, getting oneself back on track, and looking forward to a better future. And that's where we, as partners and human beings, if we want to support Nepal, we must now look at going back and traveling, because if you travel to Nepal, we help them with the economy, with their jobs, and help them recover. I think, well, yes, a lot of us have, contributed to aid to Nepal in the last few months, but I think the best aid is actually to go and travel and be with them in their country. Now, we've on this particular trip, we visit Kathmandu, which is the capital city, and then we go down south, which is actually southwest to Chitwan National Park on the border of Nepal and India. And the southern parts of Nepal and the western parts of Nepal have not been impacted at all by the earthquake. I mean, yes, tremors were felt. There was some damage to buildings, but it was not of the nature of what we saw in Kathmandu. So tourism, is happening there. Families and colleagues who work in Chitwan or Bardia or in Pokhara are ready and waiting to welcome visitors. So and that's why we're so keen to take all of you back to Nepal. And fortunately for us, our group trips to Nepal and Bhutan operate between February and April. So, by the time the first departure goes out in February, Nepal would, I'm sure, all areas would be, would be sort of waiting and would be functioning absolutely well, as I mentioned, and you'd see a very different city and country from what you saw on television a few months ago. So I'm now going to start taking you through this amazing journey of Nepal and Bhutan. So to get to Kathmandu, there are various options. One can fly from the US via Bangkok, and overnight in Bangkok and then come to Kathmandu, or one can come into India and then transit through Delhi to get to Kathmandu. As you sort of fly either from Bangkok or Delhi, and if it's a clear day and if it's a morning flight, you will fly past, the world's 14 tallest peaks, including Mount Everest. And especially February, March, April, you have wonderful mountain views as you sort of fly into Kathmandu Airport. On arriving in Kathmandu Airport, you'll be met by my colleagues, the National Habitat tour leader, plus my colleagues in the office in Kathmandu, and we will then transfer you to this wonderful heritage hotel called the Twerkers Hotel. As you can see on your screens, it's really an amazing piece of architecture. It was built about in the 60s and 70s by this wonderful gentleman called Mr. Shrestha, who decided that his whole focus in his life would be to restore and preserve traditional architecture of Nepalese homes from across the country. So he went from village to village, east to west, collecting sort of doors, windows, frames, furniture from homes which were being unfortunately pulled down and which were going to be redeveloped in a modern way, and then built this wonderful hotel called Dwarkas, and we will be spending our time in Kathmandu at Dwarkas, a wonderful little oasis in the city. While in Kathmandu, of course, we will be visiting many of the cultural areas, but also, for those who are coming in a day or two early, in order to deal with the jet lag, you'll have an opportunity to enjoy the hotel, the pool, the spa, and also enjoy the wonderful food there. From a cultural perspective, we will be exploring Kathmandu. We will be going to the older parts of the Kathmandu city, in fact the sister cities, Patan and Bhaktapur, this slide here is of Bhutan, of the square there, and as you can see, these wonderful old temples. Yes, there has been slight damage, and UNESCO and other experts have started restoring them, but it's still an amazing place to visit. So we'll spend time there during our time in Kathmandu. We'll drive past the Buddha Stupa. However, we will not be going to Darbar Square, which is in the heart of Kathmandu city, because that area was damaged quite badly, and a lot of the monuments there are actually in ruins there, and they're rebuilding that area now. So we will skip that, but focus on other areas of Kathmandu. So after sort of enjoying Kathmandu for a couple of nights, we will then fly down in a small aircraft to a wonderful place called Chitwan National Park. I am sort of biased towards Chitwan because I started my career there, as we were saying, as a national guide at Tiger Tops many, many years ago. And this photograph here of this wonderful smiling lady is of a lady who lives in one of the villages outside Chitwan National Park. She's a Tharu, she's from the Tharu community. It's the tribal community which actually migrated from India about 900 to 1,000 years ago to Nepal and settled in the plains. Wonderful people, great smiles, very hospitable. So we will land in Bharatpur and drive through these wonderful Tharu villages to get to our lodge, the Castro Lodge, where we will be spending the next few days. And as you can see on your screen, it's a new lodge, wonderful, very comfortable, with all the amenities a new hotel lodge will have. Great staff and great food, and of course, Chitwan National Park is a very, very special place. You're going to see on your screen a photograph of a rhino in an oxbow lake on a misty morning in Chitwan, as you can see. In fact, Chitwan is the meaning of the word Chitwan means heart of the jungle, and the park is close to 2,000 square kilometers. It probably is, one of the best wilderness experiences in Asia. The reason I say this is because you can walk inside Chitwan National Park. You can do a jeep safari inside Chitwan National Park. You can do a elephant safari on elephant back going out looking for game, and you can do a boat ride on the Rapti and Narayani River looking for fish-eating crocodiles, birds, and other wildlife. There's no other park in the subcontinent where you can do all these activities. And of course, Chitwan, the landscape, as you will see in the next slide, is very dense. It's elephant grass, it's oxbow lakes, and the slide's going to pop up just now on your screens. You're going to use, as you can see, there's a rhino in this oxbow lake, and you can see the elephants in the background with guests, coming through. So it's a dense sort of ecosystem. But the game viewing is still very good. You get very close to the rhinos, but you'd be awfully lucky if you see a tiger. So if you're coming on this trip, come to experience Chitwan from a wilderness perspective. You'll see rhinos, you'll see amazing birds, you'll see crocodiles, deer, monkeys, and if you're lucky, maybe possibly a tiger, but more likely not. The reason we included Chitwan was because of this amazing wilderness experience, and it complements the trip in Bhutan really well. So on one of the morning safaris, we'll go out on elephant back looking for game, as you can see on your slide, in your screens at the moment. Here, the next slide is going to show you, again, guests on elephant back, fairly close to a rhino, but this time the rhino is in sort of a clearing in the grassland. And as you can see, one gets very close. And these rhinos are amazing animals. As you can see, very, very different from the African rhino. This is the Asiatic one-horned rhino, really prehistoric looking, with this sort of armor-like shield over its body. Close to 1,500 rhinos left in the world today. It's not many, but it's considered to be a fairly stable population. And in fact, they're talking about some good increases in India from a protection perspective. And if you look at the history of the Asiatic rhino, at one point of time, the Asiatic rhino was domesticated many centuries ago. And I remember when I was doing my research in tiger tops, and one of my subjects was the rhino, we came across a story or a bit of history where they were actually had shown and documented rhinos being used in a domestic situation and being used to carry laundry. So it was quite hilarious to think of a rhino carrying laundry for people many centuries ago. As I mentioned earlier, we also do boat trips on the Narayani and Rapti River, looking for fish-eating crocodiles, marsh muggers, floating down this wonderful stream, river with, as you can see, you've got amazing flowers in the background in the forest, great bird life. You're just going to see a slide with two wonderful Brahmani ducks, which migrate from Tibet every winter and come down to Nepal and India and winter there, and they pair for life. So amazing birds. So we'll get to see some great bird life too. Another sort of image of a lovely hawk eagle coming through, fishing eagle, sorry, looking for prey on the river. We will also have the opportunity to, interact with the domesticated elephants at the lodge, bathe them, feed them, and also we'll be doing an elephant lecture, really talking about the history and conservation information on the Asiatic elephant and the differences between the Asiatic and African elephant. They're wonderful animals, in fact, one of my favorites. So it's lovely spending an hour or so with them in Chitwan National Park. From Chitwan, after we finish our safari there, we then fly back to Kathmandu, and we then carry on our journey from Nepal to Bhutan. And Bhutan is an amazing country. So from Nepal, a small Himalayan kingdom like Bhutan, but Nepal has 28 million people from a population perspective, and Bhutan, on the other hand, has only 750,000 people. So you're going to go from a country which is quite busy, you will see a lot of people, to a country which only has 750,000 people. And in fact, we will be flying into Paro, which is the main international airport in Bhutan, and it's an amazing journey in. As I mentioned earlier on, when we take off from Kathmandu, if the weather's good and clear, we will pass and fly past Mount Everest and other Himalayan peaks which get pointed out, and we normally get you seats on the left-hand side when you fly from Kathmandu to Paro, and you land at this amazing little airport in the Paro Valley. You can see the photograph on your screen with the Twerkers aircraft taking off, and in the background you've got the Paro Zong, or the Paro Fortress. It's quite an imposing structure. So you see that as you fly in and as you fly out from Paro. So after landing in Paro, we will then drive you for an hour through this wonderful valley to Thimphu. And in fact, sorry, you're going to see a photograph coming up on your screen of Mount Everest on one of the flights out of Kathmandu. And as you can see, it was a clear day, and you see the sort of green foothills, and then you see the snow-capped peaks in the background. So as we drive from Paro Airport to Thimphu, we will be driving through wonderful valleys along really crystal clear streams and rivers, and it's a wonderful one-hour journey, traveling into the capital city of Bhutan, which is Thimphu. Thimphu is still doesn't have street lights. In fact, I think they're now planning to put street lights in. You still got a policeman managing traffic there. It's bustling little town or city of 100,000 people at the moment. And that's the population of Thimphu. It's the capital city of Bhutan, and it actually is the only urban experience we will have in Bhutan. So we love staying downtown in the Tashi Hotel, which you will see on your screens shortly. And in fact, the reason we have chosen the Tashi Hotel, number one, because it's a great hotel, but also because it's in the center of town, and we can use it as a base to explore the town on foot, even when we're not touring the city. We can go out, walk out, go to a cafe for a cup of tea or coffee, walk to a cafe, walk to a gallery, etc. So Taj Tashi Hotel gives us that opportunity to explore the capital city of Thimphu. So after spending a few days in Thimphu, we will then head further down. Now, before I proceed further, I just want to sort of set the scene from an altitude perspective. Paro is at an altitude of 7,000 feet, and so is Thimphu. So when you land in Paro from Kathmandu, Kathmandu is at an altitude about, I think, 2,500, if I'm not wrong, feet. And so we spend the first day with some light activities. We don't do too much because we'd like you to acclimatize. And then, after being in Thimphu for a couple of days, you've acclimatized, and then we sort of head further out to lower altitudes. While in Thimphu, we will be visiting the Thimphu Zong. The Thimphu Zong is also called the Thimphu Fort. It's the headquarters of both the government. It also has the office of the king. K5, His Majesty, the 5th King of Bhutan, a young man, amazingly charming gentleman, and also somebody who's got some great vision for his country. And the Thimphu Zong is also the head office for the monastic body. So you will see the tower at the right of the Zong. That tower is where all the religious festivals and ceremonies take place, while the 2 or 3 buildings on the left are the seat of governance and the office of the king. Now, in fact, sometimes when we've had guests walking through Thimphu Zong, sightseeing, if you're lucky, you might bump into the king, and he's very gracious. And here on your screen, you can see His Majesty with his wife, the Queen, and in fact, if one does get lucky enough to meet him, it's a lovely experience because he comes and says hello. He actually thanks you for visiting his country. He asks if you're, he'll have a conversation with you, but he will politely make one request saying that no photographs, please. So he doesn't like being photographed, but is happy to meet and chat with guests. So that's a wonderful experience when it happens. So from the Thimphu Zong, we then drive around the city, looking at the other sites. If you're lucky, we get to see an archery match or a tournament, and you can see this young Bhutanese gentleman in his costume with his bow. Archery is a national passion, I guess. It's to Indians, it's to us Indians what cricket is, and for you all in America what baseball is. It really is a passion. In fact, I think sometimes they do, a lot of them will spend a lot of money in buying a bow. For example, they spend something like $3,000 on a bow because they are so passionate about the sport. We'll also get to meet and interact with the local Bhutanese people, see some amazing faces and features, and they're really very welcoming people. They are, Bhutan does not measure its productivity from a GDP perspective. Bhutan really measures its productivity from a term coined by the previous king, the current king's father, gross national happiness, GNH. So for them, the most important aspect of development is to make sure that the Bhutanese people have all the basic infrastructure, be it roads, electricity, water, access to healthcare, and education. And all that, according to them, sort of boils down to, being content with what you have and being happy and thankful for what you have. And that concept has really done well for Bhutan over the years. So it's lovely to see it in practice. If one's lucky, when we are in Bhutan, as sometimes our February trips do, we will get to see and experience a possible festival. On this slide here, you can see this is the Thimphu festival. You can see the Prime Minister of Bhutan in wearing this orange sort of scarf or shawl wrapped around him, leading the procession, and everybody's dressed up in their costumes and national dresses. So it's a very, very festive occasion. And festivals happen across Bhutan every month. So depending on the solar calendar, we do get to experience, if not the bigger festivals, at least the smaller, more intimate ones when we are traveling through. While in Thimphu, we also go up to a little sanctuary to go and see the takin, which is the national animal. It's a sort of combination between, I guess, a horse and a moose. It's a strange-looking animal, but it's the national animal of Bhutan, and it's been, they have a sort of a breeding center there outside Thimphu, which we go and visit. After spending a few nights in Thimphu, as I mentioned, we will drive up to a wonderful pass called the Dochula Pass, which is located at 10,000 feet. And this photograph here, this shows you this great view from the Dochula Pass. And again, on a crystal clear day, if it's not cloudy, we get to see the wonderful mountains when we get to Dochula. And you can see the snow peak mountain with the wonderful colorful prayer flags flittering away. So it's a very peaceful moment when you're up there. After sort of spending some time at Dochula Pass, we then drive down. We come down from 10,000 feet. We come down to the tropical valley of Punakha, which is at 4,000 feet. So you're at a lower elevation. It's slightly more warm, slightly more tropical. And Punakha Valley is a stunning little valley. It's a nice large valley crisscrossed by rivers, with an amazing fortress and a zong, and it's not as sort of crowded, as inhabited as Thimphu is. So a lot of open spaces and great forest there. The slide here, you can see this is a sort of walkway which we cross to get to one of the temples which we hike up to. Quite soon, you're going to see a wonderful image of the Punakha Zong, or the fort. It's really a stunning zong. It's probably by far the best example of Bhutanese architecture from a zong perspective. It's set on the confluence of two rivers, extremely pretty. So we will go and visit the Punakha Zong. You go and see how the monks are how the young monks go and study. And and if you are lucky, as I mentioned early on, we might get to see a festival. You're going to see the picture of the monks on your screen at the moment, and now you see the image of the Punakha Zong during the festival in Punakha, and you can see this huge, giant wall hanging being shown out and displayed. This wall hanging sort of symbolizes Guru Padma Samava, who was responsible for bringing Buddhism to Bhutan from Tibet many, many 1,000 years ago. So he is sort of held in very high esteem. And as you can see, the young monks and other members are dressed up in these wonderful, colorful costumes. We also meet local people, local craftsmen on the road. I mean, this gentleman is a mask maker. When we are traveling through Bhutan, we get to see Of course, the local communities, the local villages, but we also get to see nomads. This slide here is a slide of these wonderful nomads, herders from the high mountain passes and valleys, and they were down in Punakha for the festival. So it's amazing to see this cross section of people, Bhutanese people, when you're visiting their country. From Punakha, we then drive back to Paro, which is about a 4-hour drive, a 4.5-hour drive, and we come and spend a couple of nights here. And the aim in Paro is to really hike up to Tiger's Nest. As you can see on your screen, it's a wonderful monastery. Really, it's amazingly built on this little outcrop high up on the mountain. And we hike up there on the penultimate day before we fly out. But we also go and visit the Paro Zong and also the museum. Now, when you're hiking up to the Tiger's Nest, as we call it, or the Taksang Monastery, there are options of either taking a pony or a mule up halfway and then walking up the rest. The slide on your screen at the moment, shows a visitor taking a break, just resting before the final descent down to Tiger's Nest. The whole experience from start to finish takes about, would be going up and coming down. If you were to do it at a relaxed pace, would be about 3 hours. But it's well worth the experience. It really is amazing. Another photograph of Tiger's Nest. You can see the prayer flags in the foreground. So we'd love to welcome you on this journey of Nepal and Bhutan next year in February, March, and April, and share this wonderful these wonderful experiences in these two unique Himalayan kingdoms. Thank you.
Well, Suhail, thank you very much. It's just always, I love listening to you speak. You're just so passionate and knowledgeable. I feel like I'm there, but I know it's better to actually be there in person than watching on a computer. So I want to invite those of you listening to type in any questions you might have for Suhail. You can do that using the question box. It's over on the right-hand side of the screen. Remember that you might need to click on the orange button with the white arrow to expand and allow you to access the question box. So we do have a few questions here. We had one about the language spoken in Bhutan and whether you will find people speaking English.
Absolutely. In fact, for Bhutan and Nepal, while in Nepal the national language is Nepalese, it's very similar to what we speak in India, Hindi and Bengali, the same base language Sanskrit. But in Kathmandu and in Chitwan, you will interact with people who speak English fluently. And likewise in Bhutan, the people you will come in touch with, either in Thimphu or in Punakha, will speak English. But however, I'd like to just put a caveat. When you're walking through some of the villages, you might have some of the folk who don't speak English and only would speak, say, Bhutanese for that matter. But I would say, if one were to look at the people we'd be interacting with and speaking with or coming across, most of them would speak English.
Perfect, thank you. Now, what about extensions on this trip? If one wanted to stay a little longer, perhaps go to Tibet or linger a little longer in one of these countries, is that possible?
Absolutely. So, what I would recommend is, for example, with this particular trip, we are doing, we're sampling Kathmandu, Chitwan, and then we're getting to Bhutan and really spending, 6 nights in Bhutan, and we're doing Paro, Thimphu, Punakha. What we could actually do is, go beyond. For those who have extra time and wish to stay on, we could go into central Bhutan to Gangte, the Gangte Valley, or the Phobjika Valley, which you have the black-necked cranes coming to roost there, or into central Bhutan and go to Bumthang, which is supposedly the Switzerland of Bhutan. and amazing walking and hiking opportunities there too. So definitely we can add on, experiences either in Bhutan or Nepal, and also as well as India. So, you might want to do this particular Bhutan-Nepal trip and then come to India to see tigers, or come and see some cultural sites in North India, or go to the northeastern part of India too.
All right, thank you. And then what about treks for people who may want to do something a little bit more extensive? Are treks available?
Yes, they are. What I would recommend is, especially February, March, some good trekking in Nepal, but also some excellent trekking in Bhutan. So I would actually do the treks in Bhutan for the simple reason Nepal, the treks are lovely, but there are many more people and tourists. Bhutan, on the other hand, has very few tourists. One aspect I actually did not mention when I was talking about Bhutan was Bhutan only, for example, in a year has approximately 50,000 visitors. So only 50,000 visitors across the year. So when you look at going off on a trek in Bhutan, you probably will not see another Westerner or another tourist. So definitely great opportunities for that.
Great. And what would you say would be the best time of year to go on a trek if one wanted to go to Mount Everest?
I would say for Everest, I would do March and April. March, April, May. End of March, April, May would be a good time to get to Everest.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we have answered all of the questions that were in the queue. This has been so informative, and I think everyone's gotten a great deal out of it. And so at this point, Suhail, I will turn it back over to you for any other comments you might like to share before we go.
Well, thank you, Liv. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you again, first for taking time out of your busy schedules to join me on this sort of virtual journey through Nepal and Bhutan. As I mentioned, two amazing countries, lovely people, and in both these countries. So, I think it's well worth a visit to come and experience, their warm hospitality, especially in Nepal, because they really need our support now, and we can do that by sort of just being there. Thank you.
And with that, we will say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everyone.